They say a single person cannot move a mountain, but they never said a single person couldn't clear a path, pebble by pebble, until the way forward became clear for everyone. My story begins on a street that could have been any street. It was a perfectly ordinary place, with rows of houses, sleeping cars, and trees that marked the passing of seasons. But like many ordinary places, it had begun to show signs of quiet neglect. Not in a dramatic way, but in the small things. The forgotten candy wrappers that became part of the gutter. The stray plastic bags that danced in the wind like lonely ghosts. The general sense that this was just a place people passed through, not a place they truly cherished. And on this street lived a quiet man named Arthur. Every morning, just as the sky began to blush with the first hints of dawn, Arthur would step out of his house. He wasn't heading to work, not yet. In his hands, he held not a briefcase or a coffee mug, but a simple, empty trash bag. This was his ritual. He would walk the length of our block, his footsteps a soft, rhythmic beat in the morning stillness. He moved with a gentle purpose, bending down to pick up a discarded soda can here, a crumpled newspaper there. He never sighed, never grumbled, never shook his head in disappointment. He simply collected the day's forgotten debris, the small pieces of carelessness left behind by others. He did this not for praise, not for recognition, but for a single, powerful reason that slept soundly inside his house, his daughter Lily. He wanted her to open her eyes each day to a world that felt cared for. More than that, he wanted her to understand in the deepest part of her being that you don't have to wait for someone else to make things better. You can be the one to start. At first, Lily, who was only 6, would just watch him from the living room window, her small face pressed against the cool glass. She saw her father, a tall, steady figure against the rising sun, performing his silent daily task. She didn't quite understand it, but she saw the result. Their part of the street always looked a little brighter, a little more welcoming. One morning, as Arthur was about to head out, he felt a small tug on his sleeve. It was Lily, dressed and ready, holding a small grocery bag in one hand and wearing a determined expression. "I can help," she said, her voice full of a child's unwavering conviction. Arthur's heart swelled. He knelt down and looked her in the eyes. "This isn't a chore, Lily," he said softly. "Think of it like we're tidying up our big shared home. Every piece we pick up is a little bit of kindness we re-showing to our street and to everyone who lives here." And so, the lone figure of one became the quiet team of two. The sight of Arthur and his little daughter, with her bright yellow rain boots and tiny focused face, working together became a new part of the neighborhood's morning routine. At first, it was just curious glances from behind curtains. Old Mr. Henderson, who was known for his grumpy demeanor, would watch them from his porch, shaking his head as if at some strange spectacle. Mrs. Gable from across the way would offer a hesitant wave. For weeks, nothing changed but the cleanliness of the pavement where Arthur and Lily walked. But a seed had been planted. An example, offered without a single word of preaching, had taken root. The first real shift was subtle. One Tuesday, Arthur came out to find that the sidewalk in front of Mr. Henderson's house was already spotless. The grumpy old man was out there, not with a trash bag, but with a broom, sweeping away fallen leaves with a vigor no one had seen in years. He just gave Arthur a curt nod, a silent acknowledgement that passed between them. A few days later, the teenagers who lived at the end of the block, who were usually the source of most of the litter, were seen picking up their own soda bottles after an evening on the front steps. Then, Mrs. Gable started tending to the small patch of public grass by the corner, planting a few bright marigolds that seemed to smile at everyone who passed. The change was like a slow, incoming tide. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a series of small, individual decisions. People started taking more pride in their own front yards, which then spilled over into the shared spaces between them. The unspoken message was clear. If a man and his little girl could care this much about the whole street, the least we could do is care for our own small part of it. The tipping point came on a sunny Saturday morning. A notice, handwritten on a piece of cardboard, appeared on the community notice board. It said simply, "Street cleanup. Today, bring a bag and a smile." No one knew who put it there, but it didn't matter. That morning, dozens of people emerged from their houses. Mr. Henderson was directing traffic with his broom. Mrs. Gable was handing out lemonade, and children were running about, excitedly pointing out stray bits of litter for their parents to collect, as if on a treasure hunt. Arthur and Lily were there, of course, working alongside the very people who had once just been faces in windows. There was laughter, there was conversation, there was the unmistakable sound of a community coming together. They weren't just cleaning a street anymore, they were building connections, erasing the invisible lines that had separated their homes for so long. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow on the immaculate street, Arthur stood with Lily, looking at what they had all accomplished. The marigolds seemed to glow, the pavement was pristine, and the air itself felt lighter, filled with a shared sense of pride. Lily looked up at her father. "We did it, Daddy," she whispered. Arthur smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Yes, we did," he said. "But the most important thing we did was show everyone that they could do it too." He hadn't set out to move a mountain. He'd only intended to clear a small path for his daughter. But in doing so, with quiet persistence and a heart full of love, he had shown an entire community that with enough hands, each clearing their own small pebbles, no mountain is too large to overcome. The greatest changes, after all, don't begin with a roar, but with a quiet whisper of responsibility, a whisper that, when passed from one person to the next, can grow into a chorus that transforms the world.